to be the moderator again today. I think we're all a little more snuggy without our blankets and being inside. I am really confident that we're going to have a robust dialogue with our panelists, and I hope there's hope. I hope that you hear some lessons, some takeaways that in your context, in your professions, will give you a sense of optimism and hope as we enter into 2021. As Jerry mentioned, you're muted now, except for the panelists, and you'll stay muted throughout the program. Please don't hesitate to go into that Q&A box and type in your questions. Don't wait till the end. We're going to be looking at those throughout the program and pulling ones out to ask the panelists. So go ahead and start right now putting in your questions into that Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. So moving into the panel, this time last year, each of the panelists addressed trends, challenges, and opportunities in their respective industry. Each of our panelists, their organizations are anchored in Tampa Bay, which most of us know is one of the fastest growing regions in the United States. But clearly we are not in the same place we were this time last year, physically or mentally or in any way, shape, or form. So the questions I'm going to pose to the panelists are really about our experience last year and how they've weathered these in their respective industries and as leaders. So let's kick this off. Tommy, Jerry, Larry, Lakshmi, I'm going to ask each of you to talk about your specific industry in this COVID era. Can you detail some of the biggest strategic shifts, and we know there's been many, but some of the biggest in your area of work? And do you expect those shifts to become permanent, long-term, really embedded in your work going forward? Have there been any realizations that COVID changes are really things that you want to do long-term? So why don't we start off, Joe Lopano, would you mind kicking off the answer to that question, and then we'll move through the panelists?
Sure, thank you for that question. How has travel changed? Well, we have a lot more need for touchless technology. So think of the restroom experience. You should not have to touch anything. Going to the gate, as an example, currently at Tampa International, you can scan your boarding pass to get on the shuttle car to go out to the gate. The TSA has changed a lot of their requirements, and that'll only grow as we've all become more comfortable with the touchless technology that we have. So that really has changed. And as far as what are some of the positive outcomes, just this platform that we're on today, I would never, last year I didn't know how to work it. Maybe I still don't, but this is really a game changer, and it's not gonna, it's changing the way people work, and we're currently building an office building. So Larry, you're probably an expert on this, but it's changed the way we configured the office building that we're building, and the as-built environment for our workers is completely different than it was before. It's also changed the traffic on the roads, and so that's a positive. As far as air travel, it's kind of a negative on business travelers because we've all become used to using this platform. And so this will be complementary, I think. It's not going to supplant face-to-face, but it's going to take some of the business traffic away as it is complementary. But over time, we'll see that growth come back. But the first will be leisure travelers and then business after that.
Great, thanks, Joe. Lakshmi, would you like to tack on to that question?
Yeah, absolutely. Just taking a step back, as you think about entrepreneurship, the core of it is around solving problems. And so you're finding a pain point that a customer is acutely feeling and trying to solve it. And we specifically get to work with tech entrepreneurship, and that means the infusion of technology into a business can make it globally scalable from the start. And so you have no limits on who you can reach and help them solve whatever problem they may be achieving. And what's been really apparent to me is that the pandemic has just surfaced so many pain points that were probably available and there, but we weren't really seeing it. We were maybe ignoring them. And they're massive societal issues, whether it's access to healthcare, access to technology to enable education, racial, social equity. And so what I'm starting to see is that the entrepreneurship that has taken place since the pandemic, the starts of businesses are starting to solve much bigger issues that are so in our face right now. And so if there is something positive about all of this, it's just that we are solving the problems that really matter right now. And that to me is very exciting. And it's something to motivate me in my work. You know, Embark Collective is a physical place, and so it's been a really interesting time to think about the role of place as it relates to building a new company. And it is really, building a company is hard to do by yourself. And so I still see a real need for peer community. Obviously, we can do a lot of it through virtual connectivity, but when Embark Collective reopened, I just got to see firsthand the value from a mental health standpoint around just being able to see another human being in person, you know, albeit at a distance and with a mask, but still it adjusted people's ability to be more grounded in the work that they're doing and feel like they could achieve what is a very big challenge when you're building a company from scratch. And just one more thing on the sense of place is, you know, the remote work has really changed our notion of you have to be in a major metro market. And there's people who are programmed to think like that. And the pandemic has opened up possibilities for other geographies to be a viable place for somebody to move to and still build their business. And so that is something, and we'll get to this in terms of opportunities for us later, but I'll seed it with all of you in terms of the opportunity for us in Tampa Bay on how do we sort of leverage that momentum and keep it going post-pandemic to be able to attract amazing talent here.
Thanks, Lakshmi. I think your comments about having a peer community and a sense of place, I mean, a lot of that's been turned upside down this year, and how we continue to address that and not lose that in light of all the safety precautions that have to be made. I'm going to move to Tommy next if he wants to jump in, but before he starts, I just want to remind people that might have joined us a couple minutes later, don't wait till the Q&A section to put in your questions. We're going to do that after the panel's finished, but we would encourage you to go ahead and put your questions in now as the panel's ongoing. So Tommy, would you mind responding to that question?
Sure, Keri, happy to. I think two things, there's a lot, but if I had to focus on a couple, one is, as the other people have said, even in healthcare, we've had a great need to be a lot more virtual. And then where we are having people being seen on site, and even more diligent focus on safety. The virtual, to give you a feel for that, before the pandemic, we as a system and other healthcare providers, we had been trying to push telemedicine. We were not getting a lot of traction with that, partially because the insurance companies and the payers were reluctant to pay for it, and physicians were reluctant to use it. They're just not very accustomed to change. When the pandemic hit, our physician practices saw their volume drop 60, 75%. So all of a sudden, Medicare decides they'll pay for telemedicine. The physician's only way to see any patients was telemedicine. And all of a sudden, when we get in the middle of it, we're at 50, 60% of the visits are virtual. Similarly, if you think about the mental health space, unfortunately, the pandemic has resulted in more anxiety, more depression in our community, and the demand for mental health services, which was already stretched, got even more intense. And the only way to meet that was through virtual visits. So the expansion of mental health services in a virtual platform. There's a lot of other examples. If I use even our workforce, while our caregivers obviously have to be on site, if you look at our corporate office, we house about 1,300 people there. Even when the pandemic's over, we think probably about half those people will be remote workers permanently. And then one thing that I'm hopeful about is that we always were focused on safety, But I think this idea around hand hygiene and the discipline to wash your hands for 20 seconds, which I don't think I ever really did before, we're seeing how much difference it can make in the spread of germs and disease if people really focus on it. So the efforts that we have had to put in our hospitals to temperature screen everyone, require masks, reinforce hand hygiene, has been a really double down efforts on safety. And I'd like to think that will continue because it will result in less spread of other diseases as well.
Yeah. Can I come to that, Keri?
Joe, jump right in.
Yeah, I think that same thing, Tommy, will be true in the travel space. I think that you'll see the acceptance of wearing masks, much like you may have seen in Japan or China, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, very common. I think we're going to see that in the United States. And I think this has been such a traumatic effect on people that they're not going to forget it anytime soon.
Thanks, Joe. And I think, to Tommy's point around how COVID's been a huge test case for the value of telemedicine, healthcare providers around this region, including BayCare and across the country, have demonstrated that in multiples. We were forced to do that, and we've demonstrated the value of that. So I think that's certainly, from a healthcare industry, a great takeaway from the challenges of 2020. Larry, do you want to speak to your industry in real estate and what the biggest challenges and takeaways are for you?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So real estate, residential and commercial real estate markets have historically tracked pretty closely the broader economic cycles that we have. But we learned in 9/11/01 and now with COVID-19 that disruptive events also have a major impact on our industry. And if you look back to the shutdowns that began for non-essential businesses in March, the result was, in the first quarter was pretty good, but the months of April and May, we literally had a 50% drop in activity in our industry. And since then, beginning in June and really July, each month it's recovered more and more as we've opened up more. And to the point that our firm in the fourth quarter of this year, we expect to close strong and end fourth quarter with 80 to 85% of the level of revenues and business that we had in 2019. We expect that all property sectors, so residential has been driven largely by unbelievably low mortgage rates. We expect that to continue. On the commercial side, there are so many different property sectors: office, industrial, retail, student housing, multifamily, senior housing, self-storage. All of those react differently, but for the most part, we expect a full recovery in our industry in the next 12 to 24 months in all of those property sectors. A lot of the conversation that's taking place today about real estate is about working from home and the impact of that on the office market. We don't have time to talk about all those property sectors I mentioned, but I'll talk a little further about the working from home situation as we go through the program. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on that question that our panelists want to chime in before we move on to the next question?
I'll try to chime in. Larry, with the office building that we're building out at the airport, it's 9 stories, and we're going to take 3 of those floors. But what we were able to do is to change the configuration of offices, change the configuration of workspaces so that people are always 6 feet apart. And we know that, there's going to be a vaccine and an end to this, but that doesn't mean that people are still going to be comfortable being that close to others because of what Tommy said. And so we just changed that whole scheme, and we said some of the people are going to be working remotely, like 25% of the workforce will work remotely. And we knew that people wanted to work remotely, we just didn't know how to do it. So COVID sort of taught us how to do that. And we were able to change the way we configured 3 of those floors to accommodate the changing work patterns that we're seeing right now. So kind of fortunate that we changed it when we did, because we changed it right around March, April, May timeframe, and it worked out. It should work out great.
Great.
Thanks, Joe. So let's move on to another question. I asked each of you about your specific industries and your enterprise, BayCare, Tampa National Airport, Embark, Wakefield, Cushman, Wakefield. Now I'd ask you just to step back a little bit and ask you to be reflective on yourself as individual leaders. As our country and our state and Tampa Bay region have navigated the pandemic over the last year, what did you take away from this experience in your own work and from watching other leaders and working with other leaders that can benefit your leadership style and your organization going forward? We've had a lot of practice this year in navigating challenges and trying to make the most of opportunities. What was your takeaway as leaders? Lakshmi, would you mind starting off with this question?
Yeah, I think for me, there's two key pieces. One was really around the transparency that I offered anybody that was impacted by my decisions. And, if you think back to March and April, I felt like I was like a student of infectious diseases. I mean, I was trying to devour all of the information I could find, and it was new information coming out each day, sometimes conflicting. And we had to make decisions based on this variable set of information that impacted people's lives. And so what I realized was the best thing that I could do was root my decisions in what logic base I was using, what fact base I was using, so that people could understand the rationale for why I was making a decision. Why did I decide to close Embark Collective, before it was mandatory to do so? When we reopened, what were the factors that made us feel like we were ready to do so, and being very, very clear and linear in the thinking, and make sure that not only my team, but also the 60 startups that we work with that come into our space and get coaching and are really engaged with us, that they had a very clear understanding for the why behind every decision we made. So that will be something that I continue and carry forth, I think, as I continue to lead. The other piece was demonstrating humanity. No matter who you are, you were affected by COVID-19, and some people in extremely severe ways, and other people it snuck up on them, and they might have been working from home and thinking everything was good, and then one day they have the realization, like, this is hard. And so giving my team the space to say, it's okay for this to be a difficult time for you, and you don't have to be apologetic about it, and sharing with them when it was a difficult time for me, and exposing my own humanity to them, to create some sort of safety for them in just trying to do the best that they could to lead in their individual roles, and I think by acknowledging it, it made it something that we could address, and in a lot of cases move on. So hopefully it created, sort of optimized our productivity as an organization by doing that.
Thanks, Lakshmi. I think what you said is very honest, and I can relate to everything you said. Probably everybody listening can, whether you're a leader of a large organization or an individual navigating COVID. Trying to understand the information, transparency, and being real. Those are all really important qualities that we've needed this year. Tommy, I know you've had a lot on your shoulders this year. Can you speak to this question and how you as a leader, how you've navigated it and what you've taken away?
Sure, happy to. The first one that actually is a positive, and that we learned as an organization that we can actually make decisions and move faster than we thought we could. As a relatively large organization, we probably make decisions slow, move slow. COVID forced us to make decisions quicker, and the key to that is getting agreement up front. Who needs to be involved and how decisions are made. Many times what slows down decision making is that everybody wants to be involved and have their hands in a decision. They can't. So as you're trying to force a decision, people keep second guessing it. But we found if we spent a little bit of time up front to agree who needed to be involved and who could make that decision, we moved a lot quicker. The second one was around vulnerability. Sometimes with leaders, particularly the higher up you go, changing your mind is viewed as a weakness. So sometimes we take a stance and then just dig our heels in, and we're going to have to stay firm. COVID didn't allow that. Early on, the changes from the CDC around masks seemed to change twice a week. And we felt goofy at times because we were telling our team members, here's what we need you to do. And we were constantly changing that. So we eventually had to get a little bit more comfortable recognizing that we were not as in control as we thought we would. You had to be more comfortable recognizing that we're going to say, this is what we're going to do today, but it might change later as the environment changed. And the final thing for me, because I've never been accused of being a warm and fuzzy, people have been under a lot of stress throughout this. And I find that when people are under stress, it brings out the best in some people, brings out the worst in others. And it's more important than ever to make sure you actually know the person, because if you don't know the person and where they're coming from, you'll see people reacting and don't really know why. So I've had to, this past year, spend even more time with people I thought I knew really well, trying to understand where they are, because when people are tired, and most of our leaders are tired and they're stressed, sometimes they will react in ways that you wouldn't expect. Just a few thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Tommy. That's really helpful. Larry, what are your takeaways?
Well, probably the most important thing that I learned and was very timely was that although my wife and I love each other dearly, we are not ready to retire and spend every day together at home. That's not going to happen, not even close. But I learned some other things. We've learned some other important things. We've learned that as it relates to this whole work from home situation, we learned that we really miss seeing all of our colleagues in one place together, person to person. And we look forward to being able to do that again soon. We're back to work, but we're back in a very phased way. We also learned that our millennials are the ones that are most challenged by this work from home scenario because of their need to be around people for mentoring and growth. We learned that it's very difficult to onboard a new employee from a distance. And probably most importantly, I think we learned that employers should, and we as a firm should, and I should as a leader, be more flexible and open to employees working from home in the future. But I would tell you that despite some companies like BayCare, and when Tommy explained how many of his employees might work from home permanently, that total population of people working from home is going to be a lot less than is being projected right now. We might have time to discuss that a little more later. But I think the good news is for all of us is, as it relates to trust. I think leaders and managers and people that run companies have learned in COVID-19 to trust their employees more, to trust them working from home, to trust them you don't have to see them every minute of every day, to see that they can be productive. And my hope is, and my belief is, that our employees will trust us as leaders as we determine how this whole new work from home situation will work, and what the strategy will be and what the implementation will be. So we've learned a lot, and it's not over yet.
Right. Thanks, Larry. Joe, I know your industry has had a lot of challenges this year, and you must have quite a few observations about the sort of elements of leadership that you've needed and that you've watched in others that have resonated in 2020.
Yeah, it's to the comments that were made about getting to see others and your colleagues. I think, Larry, you said that this is, as a CEO and with 600 employees, to sit at home and try to lead, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And we got the work done. The work is getting done. But it made me understand how personal leadership is, and how the relationship and the ability to talk to someone about what's going on in their life and how you're doing today, and not just my employees, but you know, my job at the airport is a lot of times just walking around and talking to TSA and talking to the people that work for the concessions and the Starbucks. And I know a lot of those people for years, and not seeing them is very difficult in order to create the culture that we want, the leadership that we want. It's very strong, and it's going along, it's carrying us through, but I just can't wait to get back and begin to exert personal leadership and exert excitement on our people, because people just need hope. And we talked about hope before. It's a very powerful emotion, and it's hard to impart over a screen like this. And so I think I really learned about how personal leadership really is. And I just can't wait to get back there.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly in times of need, that personal touch is really important. I think all of you spoke to that to some degree. Before we move on to the next question, did anybody have any further comments or closing comments on that question that maybe you didn't get to? Okay, all right, well, let's move on to our last question before we get to Q&A. And that's just a reminder, if you have a burning question that you haven't quite put into that question box, go for it. This is your big chance. So we all know all too well that 2020 is a year we'd rather put behind us, and we're getting really close. Lots of disappointment, lots of challenges, probably more than any of us have ever experienced professionally and maybe even personally. So you all have outlined that through the struggle, there were some good outcomes, that we've grown, we've learned, there's innovations that will continue past this year, that were fast forwarded in this environment. You know, Metropolitan Ministries, their hashtag is spread hope, and we all need hope going into next year. If you could each speak to what makes you hopeful for Tampa Bay's future in light of all these things that we've experienced, what makes you hopeful for next year, for our region, for your industry, for you personally? Larry, do you want to start off?
Sure. And thinking about this question, it made me recall some conversations we're having recently with our colleagues and with many of our clients. We work with clients that are looking to move and expand and grow in our market. And I said it reminds me a little bit now in the economic development side of our business, a little bit like 2002, right? The year after 9/11. And if you think about our economic development successes that happened after that event, we had companies like Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation move major operations here. We had, and there were many economic development project wins. We had companies like Citi and MetLife really expand their operations here, in part because of what happened in 9/11. I would tell you that it feels a little bit like that now. We have a lot of interest. We have 3 major mixed-use projects with cranes in the air and major construction going on in Water Street downtown and the Heights project, as well as the Midtown project in the West Shore District. And I would tell you that keep your ears and eyes open for some announcements. We're back in that game again, and I think that's really going to help our economy and our market, real estate market. There is and there will be plenty of demand for those 3 projects, the office components of those projects. That's from a business standpoint. From a personal perspective, I'm really hopeful that these vaccines will be broadly accepted by the people in the United States, and that we'll put this COVID-19 challenge behind us by the summer of next year is my hope. And last but not least, from a personal standpoint, I am so frustrated and tired of the political divisiveness that we have in this country, and I'm just hopeful that improves going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, well said, Larry. Joe, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with what Larry just said about divisiveness, and we see the results of that every day on a national level. But I would say on a local level, I'm very encouraged with the way we have all rallied and worked together to come through this. And I think that our economy was so strong going into this. I think that when you give people hope and the vaccine starts to work, I think people are going to just rebound like crazy. And, you know, what I've seen during this pandemic, I'll just give an example with Tommy. we thought it would be help the travelers to get confidence if they got a test for COVID at the airport. At least they would know when they go see their relatives that they're good. And Tommy and his team and Keri, you two, moved quickly, moved heaven and earth, and we got the tests. We're the first airport in the country to do this. And we had airports from around the country and the world calling us saying, how'd you do that? And I said, well, we got good partners. BayCare wanted to do it. They thought it was right for our community to try to build confidence in travel. And our mayor, as an example, also. People who are leading from the heart do things that may not be economically the best for them, but they're doing it because the community needs it. And so I've seen that in spades throughout this whole thing, people really leaning forward. So that's what I'm hopeful about.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Joe. Our region has really stepped up in so many ways, from the nonprofit sector to industry, business, government. They've really shown their value and their ability to collaborate. Lakshmi, what are your thoughts?
I'm hopeful about a lot of things. That may be just the inherent nature of somebody who is in the world of entrepreneurship. But, I mentioned before that there's this opportunity around attracting talent when you're not a major tech city. And that to me is something that we have to take advantage of and that we can take advantage of. Since the start of this month, I have seen South Florida sort of emerge as a place where they are professing how great it is for startups and venture capital to be based there. And that's been led by a couple of venture investors moving to Miami and broadcasting that and about how great it is. I think about Tampa and I'm like, I would much rather be here. And so I think about just the opportunity that we have to talk about this as a tremendous place to build and a great place to move if you have that flexibility and you can bring your profession with you and you want to live somewhere livable. I don't need to tell this crowd all of the reasons why we want to be here. We are here. But just to be able to sort of spread the gospel, and smaller cities this is our moment to be able to do that. So it's really about how do we take advantage of this moment in time in a very authentic and credible way to attract some pretty influential names to our city and our region. So that is exciting from a professional standpoint. It's the reason why I moved down here, was I saw the potential down here. And I think that in some ways, the circumstances that we're in have made us even more prime to exploit that potential than we were several years ago. So it's really exciting. Obviously the vaccine is something that I am very, very hopeful about. And then the last thing is just, I have a lot of hope in my team. It's been a really challenging year. We opened our physical space, our 32,000 square foot space, in January of 2020. And so my heart cannot take the ups and downs of what we have gone through this year as a brand new organization that finally had its full value proposition come to fruition in January, only for the pandemic to hit in March. And the fact that my team has hit on every single goal that we had set forth in 2019 for 2020. And they do it with a smile on their face. There's a sense of positivity and a can-do attitude despite everything that's against us. That to me gives me amazing hope, because if things remain on the trajectory that they are right now, it seems like 2021 will be better than 2020. I'm going to say that and speak it into existence. And if we can make it through 2020, then this team can make it through and really thrive and live up to the potential that we see for ourselves for every year to come. So I see hope, and I'm extremely grateful for the resilience that this organization, this Embark collective community, has been able to demonstrate.
Thanks, Lakshmi. And Tommy, as the CEO of the largest health system in Tampa Bay, I think we all want to know what gives you hope going into next year.
Yeah, so clearly, like the others, the promise that vaccines bring, getting an end to this is something I'm extremely hopeful about. Like Larry, I think it's probably the summertime, but it's impacted so many people. The ones I probably feel for the most are the elderly population. I was talking to a friend of mine, and his parents' view is they don't know how many good years they have left, and they're just getting cheated out of one. And so I'm hopeful that this will help us get past that. The bigger hope, though, is around what Joe said, and that's collaboration. Before the pandemic, Tampa Bay was one of a handful of the best places to live and work in the country, and I believe it will be that again after the pandemic. The one thing that has held us back as a region, in my view, is a lack of collaboration between Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater, that big body of water. Sometimes we've not put our own interest second to the interest of the region. And as Joe pointed out, there have been a lot of good examples of people recognizing this issue is so big, we have to put the community first. In our industry, the example is my counterparts at all the major healthcare systems. We've been meeting since probably February on a regular basis to talk about issues relative to COVID, trying to put the community first. When we started, there were a couple of people that while they didn't know each other, they didn't like each other because of the perception they had of what their organization meant. Fast forward now, while we still compete, we meet every week and we put competing aside and talk about what the community needs and how can we work together. It's a big wish, but I'm hoping some of what we've learned in those areas, I've even seen county governments willing to talk to each other more than the past. I'm hoping that people see the power of that and that it won't totally go away when COVID goes away.
Great, thanks, Tommy. Lots of reasons to be hopeful. So thank you, panelists. I think we're going to move now into the question and answer session. Jerry has been studiously looking at all the questions. So Jerry, where are we going to start with our questions?
Yeah, thanks, Keri. And look, to the audience who's been firing these questions off, thank you. There's more here than we're probably going to get to right now, but we'll do our best to cover these across the broad categories. We have about 15 minutes or so for the panelists, so to keep that in mind. So we could be sort of quick and short on these, but I'll try to go through them. The first one, really, Joe, this is for you, and Tommy, makes sense for you to jump on this. As we look at opening up the economy again, today's a huge day. We got an FDA panel on the Pfizer vaccine. Assuming that gets rolled out, people start getting vaccinated. Is there some sort of needed or potential incentive plan, if you will, for vaccinated people to get to be able to prove that and help open up travel? The Israeli Prime Minister recently talked about issuing a green passport for COVID vaccinated people so that they can prove that they're safe and can travel freely. Is that a reasonable thing? Does that make sense in the US? Does that help stimulate people getting back on airplanes quicker once these vaccinations roll out? And how practical is it to implement that? You've obviously done something, Joe, very entrepreneurial and different with the testing program. This is, I guess, something similar. And I guess, Tommy, is it even feasible to issue some sort of a vaccination sort of passport, if you will?
Well, I can tell you that currently Delta is rolling out what they call quarantine-free lanes. And the two cities that will be served are Atlanta to Amsterdam and Atlanta to Rome. And the requirement to get on that plane is you got to have a PCR test 72 hours prior. And then when you get to the airport, you take an antigen rapid test. And if everything is good, you get on the plane. And when you land in Rome, you take another antigen rapid test. And if that's good, you go through, just like a passport, you go through customs and you're good to go. You can go anywhere you want to go. And so that is what's happening now. I think that, to require people to have a green passport would probably have some legal implications with respect to civil liberties. And I don't want to take the vax and all the rest of that stuff. Why can't I fly? I'm not, I took the PCR test, I'm good. So I think that may not be the solution, but there needs to be some thinking on that, though.
Yeah, like Joe, I'm not sure I see it being passports, but there's already discussion about that among the professional sports teams. I was just participating in the discussion earlier that when you think about trying to get hockey games and football games back to full capacity, you don't have the same civil liberty issues. Microsoft, Apple are already looking at how can they connect people's certificates around vaccinations to mobile devices. So I do think, as you think about some of the sports activities and the like, they will get to a place where they will allow more spectators if they indicate they've been vaccinated. So I think it's practical, and I think you'll see it in selected places.
Thank you. Larry, I'm going to direct the next question. There's a lot of questions, as not surprising, on implications on real estate, both at individual office levels, but industry wide. I'm going to try to aggregate some of these together because it's a lot of questions. But can you talk a little bit about how you see? You said earlier that you expect a full recovery in real estate, which is awesome to hear. Obviously, every sector is different types of businesses. When you think about the office space particularly and the work from home environment we are in now, how do people like yourself in the real estate business, and what's the information you're getting back from your clients about how they see that 3-5 years from now? Will people still likely be doing 2 to 3 days in the office? And then how does that get managed? Do you co-share space and you have to coordinate that? Or do you have the same footprint in real estate because you have fewer people, but you're bigger and you're less dense, if you will, in densification? Can you talk a little bit about that? And then I think for the other panelists, if they want to jump in, how do you think about it as business leaders when you're trying to make those decisions? You have a lot of employees. Do you see, first of all, when do you see people going back full time? There's a lot of differentiation in that. And then more, looking forward 3 to 5 years, how do you think about your real estate footprint and what that means?
Thank you for that question. Well, if you look at the work from home population pre-COVID, estimated to be 5 to 6% of the office employees. It's doubled. We believe it will double long-term at a minimum. That would take it to 12, maybe to 15%. And if you do the, there are a lot of polls that are taking place, surveys that are taking place, and there's surveys of employees, and there's surveys of employers or the leaders of those firms. There's a pretty big disconnect there in terms of expectations. But there will clearly be a double or more of people that will work from home all the time. There will be 60, our best guess, 60% of the population, 50 to 60% will work in the office all the time. And then there will be a larger group or a group in the middle that will work from home some of the time, whether it be one or more. When you do the math on that, companies right now that are kicking the can for a year. They're saying, I don't know what it's going to look like. If I can wait a year and get COVID behind us, then we can figure our strategy out. But if you do the math on how this works, there's clearly a desire to spread people out, as you mentioned, as one of you mentioned earlier. As you spread people out, that increases the need for office space. There's a reduction for people that will work from home, which is the second impact. But then the overall demographics and population increase expectations, including Florida, which has so much in-migration. There are 2 pluses there and there's a minus if you look at the formula. And the net result of that is there will be equal or greater demand for office space in the future. And there will be a compromise between employees and employers in terms of expectations. And we'll end up somewhere between those 2 constituencies in terms of how much work from home really works. I mentioned earlier the trust factor. That's a huge shift for us, I think, as leaders to trust our employees working from home going forward.
Right. And does anybody else on the panel want to comment on how you're thinking about it as in your own businesses and how you're thinking about your footprint in real estate?
Well, I'll jump in. With our office building I talked about earlier, we've changed a lot of our philosophies, and I agree with the statistics that Larry just cited, and maybe 12 to 15% remote, and also I think Lakshmi said it earlier. People work from home remotely, but you still need a place to collect those people. Whether that be once a month or once every 2 weeks, everyone needs to come together to hear a message, or everyone needs to come together to see each other. And so, we still have the same amount of square footage that we had pre-COVID being assembled at the airport. And I think, Larry talked about, well, you spread the employees out, that means you need more square feet. Yep, you're right. So, from our standpoint, and by the way, the office building, whether it's because it's connected up by train to the plane, is feeling, it's booking up pretty good in a COVID environment. So I think all those points are valid, and we have changed a bit in what we want to do, but we're going to be able to bring everybody back when we need to.
Thank you, Joe. Lakshmi, this next question might be best for you to opine, at least start on. The pandemic has done so many things, but there's been a sort of a reset, obviously, at many, many levels. Right now in the markets and what I do every day, there's an awful lot of discussion on stakeholder capitalism, not just operating for profit, but operating for good, if you will. And there's a lot of press on that recently, and it's been a very big topic. Given there is all this change and there's an opportunity to sort of reset, are you seeing, especially entrepreneurial clients, businesses, focusing on any of these principles? One of the member in the audience talked about the JETI principles: justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Is this an opportunity, and have you seen any evidence of employers trying to be more concerned about these principles and JETI specifically and anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think broadly making sure that there is a set of values that's guiding an organization has become, I think, even more important than ever, because especially for teams that are remote, it's what are you latching onto? What is your connection to the organization, to the brand? And, as we think about your customers, what is truly differentiating you? If they're not engaging with you in person and it's just another Zoom call, what are the pieces that are differentiating you from all of the customers? So in our world of startups, we're seeing that companies are having to lay that foundation even before they have a product to sell in order to really be compelling as beyond the software or the physical product that they're offering or the services that they're offering their customers. And it's important from a employee attraction standpoint as well, especially younger, more junior level employees. They are demanding this type of foundation of the organizations that they're working for. They don't just want it to be a pure capitalism play. They want to make sure that you can do good while being profitable. And so it's fascinating to see it. I get to see it sort of a first front row view of it here, just to see that it has to be part of the conversation very early. And I would say probably several years ago, it wasn't the case, or not necessarily to the broad extent that it is right now.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Does anybody else want to comment on that? We're kind of right up against our time, but we can have 30 seconds or so. Okay, great. Well, we're right where we're supposed to be in the timeline. So I'm going to, again, thank the panelists again for a very insightful and thoughtful discussion, as it was again last year. This is very helpful, and I'm sure the audience got a lot out of it. I'm going to turn it over now to Tim Marks to close us out.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you, Keri, and thanks to all the amazing panelists. I'll say ditto to all the things that I heard, and if I was in church, I'd throw out an amen, because your little local homegrown homeless shelter has faced all the same challenges that you've all faced. You all are 24/7 operations and leaders, and you've all had to do pivots, and you all have some elements of frontline workers, and so did Metropolitan Ministries as we started our pivots in March to really help more families and more communities. And we were provided with so much support from the community. There's been a lot of conversations about what a great community we live in. Over $4.5 million in support has gone out to the community, and that's all unbudgeted. We didn't have a budget to do this, but individual donors, collaborative partners, The public sector, city, county, everybody worked together to help us help more families than ever before. And we'll probably spend another $2 million in COVID relief, again, unbudgeted, but the funds and the support is coming in to allow us to do that. And this translated into 56,000 food boxes going out. It's a 1,500%, if there is such a number, yeah, there is, of growth month over month, year over year of distribution of food in need. And what we realized is that we just couldn't, and I love this image, that's a former Speaker of the House and board member Will Weatherford loading up food in a truck, serving this summer in a 90-degree humid day as we helped families come to our campus. But of those 56,000 food boxes, the majority of those boxes were distributed outside of our main campus. We had to turn ourselves inside out. We found families that were COVID positive or quarantining because of their health situation. And so we started doing home deliveries every Thursday. And then sometimes we would go into those hardest hit communities. We would go into affordable housing complexes and do food distributions there, where before you'd have to take a bus or drive to get help from us. We helped people with rental assistance and utility assistance, and they never got out of their home. We were able to case manage families virtually and use online technology to help families. As we gear up for the holidays, we have another 30,000 families that we'll be feeding in the next 2 weeks. Home families will start showing up at our tent tomorrow morning, and we're doing it with 65 different partners this year. We are doing it with so many homebound partners. Meals on Wheels for Kids is helping us do homebound deliveries. We're going to keep spending money over and above our COVID relief. We last year spent about $250,000 on food, and we've already spent $2 million on food. Buying, just the other day, we bought 7,000 turkeys, 6,000 hams, because people are not in the office doing food drives. So we're going out and we're buying the food. And so all of this is coming together as a community. Great need, but again, great support and a great staff to help make it happen. Behind every number that you've heard, I remember when Joe said he's missing his 600 employees, and Tommy referred to getting to know people. Behind every number is a story. And Tamika is one of those stories of those families that we're helping. You see on the screen how she expressed her gratitude. But let me tell you the why behind the what for Tamika, because she's grateful, but she's grateful for more than just the program and the food. She's grateful that her husband, Calvin, is alive. And we always ask our clients permission if we can share their story, and she gave us her permission. Calvin had a very large brain tumor. He's a father of 5 girls. Tamika and Calvin have 5 girls. And he had a brain surgery, and he's still suffering with seizures post-surgery. And, but she's grateful. The thing she's grateful for is that he's still there, that they can be together. And she's grateful that they haven't come in contact with this deadly virus, and that she's thankful that God will continue to strengthen her entire family. We ask sometimes our clients if they would like to share a prayer of what they're prayerful for. And Tamika let her daughter, whose nickname is Yummy, write this prayer. And so this is Yummy's prayer. She said, "I just turned 10 years old. My mom, Tamika, is allowing me to write this prayer. First, I want to thank God for waking us up this morning. I really would like to pray for my mom and my dad. My mom needs surgery on her knee, and I see how much pain she is in every day. She does so much taking care of me and my other 4 sisters and my dad." So Tamika is caring for dad, but we learned from Yummy that Tamika's struggling as well. And she's got a need for a knee surgery, but she can't do that because she's running the household. This is a real story, and Tamika's coming to the tent tomorrow at 10, and I'm going to greet her and love on her, and that love's going to come from this community. You're going to get an email in your inbox. There may be an opportunity for you to share that email if you've already helped already. Maybe you want to do a virtual food drive. You can go right over to Amazon or any of the platforms that we have. You can just click on the link and there's wish lists, and you can send food or toys to the tent. We'll give it to the families. You can do a virtual food drive for your organization. You can do a neighborhood drive, or you could shop at our holiday store at metromin.org. So there's lots of ways that you can help. I am so very grateful for these amazing leaders that have donated their time. Each and every one of them, their industry has been turned upside down. And each and every one of them cares about the work of Metropolitan Ministries. I've seen them in the tent volunteering. I've seen them support the work. They are truly leaders who lead with their heart. And I'm so very grateful for you, Joe, Tommy, Larry, and Lakshmi, for your leadership. Tampa's in good hands with great, capable leaders like these folks, and Keri and Jerry as well. So thank you so very much for your amazing support.